How the brain decides whether to trust or not. There's something invisible that separates those who are heard from those who merely speak. It's not the volume of your voice, nor the content of your words. It's distance, the subtle space between you and the other person, where the mind decides whether to pay attention, trust, open up, or defend itself. This space has its own weight, vibration, and code. It's the silent language of presence. Science has proven it. The brain interprets someone's approach as an emotional signal, too close, and the limbic system reacts as if there's a threat. The body stiffens, shoulders slump, and eyes shift. You may be speaking the most inspiring truth in the world, but if you're within 2 feet of someone who hasn't given you that permission, their brain has already turned off its listening. It's an ancestral defense, an instinct programmed to protect vital space. When you respect this distance, usually between 4 and 5 feet in professional settings, the brain understands that there's safety, and safety is the first step to trust. At this point, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for attention and decision-making, takes over. The person listens to you, evaluates you, and considers you. They don't feel the need to protect themselves, and so they allow themselves to think. This difference is what separates an ordinary communicator from someone who commands a room. Effective leaders and speakers don't just master words, they master space. They know when to take a step forward to create connection and when to step back for reflection. This isn't theater, it's applied neuroscience. Every movement changes the other person's perception of you. Space creates the framework of authority, and the brain reads this framework before hearing any sentence. In meetings, those who master this silent dance earn a kind of respect that isn't asked for, but rather earned. The audience feels in control, and control instills trust. This is the trigger that activates collective focus. The human mind seeks security to relax, and only then process new ideas. This is why mastering distance is more powerful than tone of voice. But there's another element that determines whether you're heard or ignored: the angle. It's not enough to be at the right distance. You need to understand the point from which you're speaking. The human brain interprets body angle as a symbol of intention. When you speak directly to someone, you activate mirror neurons, the same ones that make the other person imitate your gestures, your rhythm, your energy. It's as if, for a few seconds, your minds synchronize. This is the moment when genuine rapport emerges, that state in which everything flows and the other person feels understood. The curious thing is that this connection doesn't depend on words. It happens even in silence, as long as the body is aligned, as long as your eyes meet on the same plane. It's a code that precedes reasoning. Speaking from the side conveys neutrality. This is what great negotiators do when they need to maintain balance between 2 parties without appearing biased. The brain perceives the side angle as a sign of mediation, not confrontation. It's the opposite of the frontal posture, which suggests emotional engagement. And there are also vertical angles, top-down and bottom-up, which completely alter the unconscious reading. Speaking from above triggers a feeling of subordination in others, even if subtle. This is what happens when someone stands in front of seated people, or when a camera is placed a few inches below the speaker's face, projecting the speaker as an authority figure. The reverse is also true. Speaking looking up causes the brain to interpret vulnerability, fragility, submission. It's millimeters that change the story. These reactions aren't theoretical, they're measurable. Proxemics and neurocommunication studies show that distance and angle alter heart rate, pupil dilation, and even the level of dopamine released during a conversation. The mind reacts before understanding. It doesn't consciously decide whether to trust, it feels, and the body responds in milliseconds. That's why, in experiments conducted in corporate and academic settings, small changes in spatial arrangement resulted in up to a 30% increase in perceived credibility. Space isn't a detail, it's a tool of influence. Imagine a meeting where someone gets too close right at the beginning. The words may be kind, the smile may be sincere, but the other person's brain has already sent the alert: attention, potential threat. They look away, cross their arms, and pretend to listen. The connection is lost before it even begins. Now imagine the opposite: someone who maintains the appropriate distance, but when the topic gets deeper, takes a step forward, closes the distance, and looks you in the eye. This simple approach, at the right moment, changes the emotional climate. The mind understands that there is empathy. Attention increases. Trust is consolidated. It's as if the brain is saying, "It's safe here. I can open up." In the age of video conferencing and hybrid communication, this game has become even more subtle. Cameras have created an illusion of artificial proximity. When you get too close to the frame, your face takes up the entire screen, and the other person's brain interprets this as an intrusion. When you get too far away, it appears disinterested or lacking energy. There's also an ideal visual distance, usually where the shoulders appear full and there's a bit of space above the head. It's the point at which the frame conveys presence without intrusion. Even in the digital world, the brain remains the same, governed by the same codes of space and angle. The camera angle also speaks volumes. Slightly lowering the camera so that the viewer's gaze is level with the viewer's eyes creates a sense of equality. If the camera is lower, the viewer feels dominated. If it's higher, the effect is one of inferiority. These perceptions occur at an unconscious level, but they determine how willing someone is to listen to what you say. Professionals who understand this, communicators, leaders, teachers, are adjusting their environments, testing variations in light, distance, and framing with computer vision software. These tools map where the audience's gaze focuses and what attracts or distracts attention. It's not the future, it's the present. Communication is moving from an intuitive act to a science applied to the mind. Every gesture, every inch of space, every change of angle is an invisible message that the brain deciphers before reason. And while many still believe that being heard is a matter of voice or charisma, those who master the science of distance and angle are already a step ahead, because they understand how the human brain truly decides to listen. Power lies in this invisible space between one body and another, where respect, presence, and influence are built. And it is at this point that the true art of being heard begins. There is a silent language that decides who will be heard and who will be ignored, even before the first word is spoken. It's not in sentences, nor in conscious gestures. It's in space. Science calls it proxemica, the study of how distance, positioning, and environment shape perception between people. This invisible code acts as an emotional layer of communication, translating intentions, gauging threats, and calibrating trust. It is the brain that decodes in real time what the other person's body communicates without saying it. When someone enters a room, the minds of those present begin to map the space. Unconsciously, the brain uses the visual field to calculate zones of safety and influence. Those in the center are perceived as figures of power. Those on the edges convey reserve or neutrality. Each person's position becomes a non-verbal narrative. Interestingly, this interpretation isn't just cultural, it's neurological. The human mind, programmed since primitive times, associates proximity with emotion and distance with reason. Therefore, more intimate conversations tend to take place in smaller spaces, where sounds, glances, and gestures carry emotional intensity. Strategic discussions involving analysis and decision-making flow better when the space is larger, allowing the brain to operate more objectively. Companies that grasped this code began adjusting the design of their meeting rooms. It's no coincidence that great leaders choose positions that balance visibility and proximity. At a meeting table, sitting at the point of visual convergence, neither at the extreme nor completely central, creates a sense of natural command without imposing hierarchy. Others' brains pick up on this and respond with spontaneous attention. It's a subtle form of non-verbal leadership. Contrary to popular belief, it's not about manipulation, but about attunement, aligning the space with the message you want to convey. Proxemics is also the field where empathy and authority balance each other. When someone gets too close, the other person's brain triggers a silent alarm. The limbic system senses the invasion and prepares the body to defend itself. This is why, in many conversations, even without realizing it, people take a step back when they feel uncomfortable. This step isn't rational, it's biological. The amygdala, a small structure responsible for detecting threats, reacts before consciousness. It measures the space between bodies as if gauging danger. A simple 20-centimeter advance can change the course of a conversation, shifting it from understanding to confrontation. On the other hand, maintaining too much distance can have the opposite effect: disconnection. The brain interprets distance as disinterest, coldness, or arrogance. It's a delicate balance, the perfect balance between respecting another's space and demonstrating emotional presence. This invisible ruler varies from culture to culture, but the principle is the same. Space communicates. When a leader masters this perception, they create environments where people feel simultaneously safe and engaged. And when a communicator understands this dynamic, their voice gains weight, not through volume, but through the sense of coherence their body conveys. But there's something even faster than reading distance: the instantaneous judgment of trust. In about 3 seconds, the brain decides whether to trust you, and this process is almost entirely unconscious. It begins with eye contact. When two eyes meet, the amygdala analyzes the intensity, timing, and direction of that gaze. A firm but not fixed gaze elicits empathy. An evasive or excessively prolonged gaze generates discomfort. In that instant, the other person's body reacts. If they feel invaded, they cross their arms, turn their torso away, and close their body language. It's the mind trying to protect itself. Neuropsychological studies show that during a first interaction, the human brain evaluates facial micro-expressions, posture, and distance to predict whether the other person represents a threat or a collaborative relationship. Every fraction of a second, the mind collects subtle data: the angle of the face, the rhythm of breathing, the tilt of the head, and without realizing it, a decision is made to trust or not. This decision shapes everything that follows. If the mind has classified the other person as safe, the prefrontal cortex is activated, opening space for listening, curiosity, and reasoning. If it has classified them as a threat, the limbic system takes over, redirecting energy towards self-protection. This is why even the most rational argument, delivered in the wrong place, fails. This process is so automatic that technology companies have begun to explore it with mathematical precision. Behavioral analysis software already maps how distance and eye contact affect receptiveness in presentations and meetings. In innovation labs, high-definition cameras record variations in posture and gaze, and algorithms correlate this data with attention levels measured by brain sensors. The result is surprising. The more coherent the relationship between space, gaze, and voice, the greater the emotional engagement and message retention. It's not the content that captivates the audience, but the environment the brain interprets as safe for listening. Trust, therefore, is not born of intention, but of perception. It reflects the harmony between body and context. When someone presents themselves calmly, maintaining a comfortable distance and a gaze that alternates between presence and listening, the other person's brain relaxes. They feel they are dealing with someone predictable, and predictability is the foundation of emotional security. This is the true power of proxemics. It speaks not about what we say, but about what the other person feels when they hear us. Every step, every gesture, every glance builds an invisible atmosphere that precedes words. The mind doesn't analyze speech. It reads energy, space, and intention. It is in this silent realm prior to reason that respect is born. Those who master this code don't need to force authority or compete for attention. They just need to be in the right place, at the right distance, at the right angle, and the other person's mind will do the rest. Because in the end, what decides whether a voice is heard isn't the sound, it's the space in which it resonates. The world has changed the way we communicate, but the brain remains the same. Screens have replaced desks, video windows have replaced meeting rooms, and yet the human mind still reacts to framing, distances, and angles as if it were face-to-face with another body. What was once just a virtual conversation has now become a field of detailed study, the intersection of neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and behavior. So-called intelligent video conferencing is already transforming the way leaders, teachers, and teams interact digitally. And what AI knows about your body may reveal more about you than you realize. Computer vision systems, present in major corporate platforms, have begun mapping micro-gestures, posture, and eye focus during interactions. This isn't science fiction. This data is analyzed in real time to measure engagement, attention, and even the level of influence of each participant. AI identifies who dominates the visual space on the screen, who is more expressive, who zones out, and who maintains a steady gaze. Heat maps show where the collective is looking, which faces attract the most attention, and which areas of the screen become dead zones of interest. It's the digital herd effect. The human brain tends to follow the gaze of others, concentrating on where there is collective focus. When everyone looks at the same point, an invisible chain of shared attention is created. The fascinating thing is that the brain interprets these two-dimensional images as if they were three-dimensional. The distance between you and the camera, the size of your face in the frame, the direction of your gaze, all of this is read as physical presence. When you get too close, the other person's brain reacts with slight discomfort, as if their personal space has been invaded. When you move too far away, there's a decrease in the perception of connection. Therefore, the ideal framing is one in which the shoulders appear full, there's a small space above the head, and the gaze is at the same level as the lens. This is the exact point at which the brain reads the image as balanced presence. Technology companies are already testing systems that automatically adjust this framing. Sensors detect when the user moves and recalibrate the camera position to maintain natural alignment with the interlocutor's gaze. This isn't just aesthetics, it's applied psychology. Eye contact is the first sign of trust the brain seeks. When the other person's eyes appear to be looking directly into yours, even through a screen, the brain reacts as if it were in a physical conversation. Heart rate synchronizes, verbal response time improves, and the sense of emotional presence increases. But AI goes beyond framing. It also recognizes micro-expressions, subtle movements of eyebrows, eyes, and mouth that reveal emotion before speech. Machine learning systems can detect levels of engagement and even patterns of empathy from these signals. Companies that tested this technology discovered something curious. The emotional energy of a group in a video conference tends to align with that of the most expressive participant. It's as if the collective brain mirrors dominant behavior, seeking harmony. This explains why, in online meetings, the enthusiasm of a single face can lift the entire group. while the apathy of another can drain everyone's attention. This realization has led leaders and communicators to rethink their digital presence. Positioning in front of the camera, the light on the face, body posture, everything has become a narrative tool. The brain, after all, processes spatial context as a story, and this is where the power of position comes in. Whoever occupies the center, whoever is better lit, whoever maintains an open and relaxed posture, is naturally perceived as a reference figure. Even if the content is identical, the framing changes the emotional interpretation. The brain seeks protagonists, and the space, physical or virtual, decides who they will be. In physical rooms, this translates into a nearly universal pattern. Those who position themselves near the light or the center of the table tend to be seen as more confident, more capable, and even more competent. Studies in organizational psychology show that authority bias is triggered by small contextual details. A speaker standing near a lit window is perceived as more confident. A participant sitting in the shadows, even with the same ideas, is remembered with less impact. The mind associates light with clarity and centrality with power. It's instinctive, not rational. In online meetings, the same logic applies. A well-lit face creates a sense of transparency and accessibility. A dark background, strong contrast, or an out-of-lens gaze provoke unconscious distrust. AI, when measuring engagement patterns, already detects these reactions. Well-framed and lit faces keep the audience engaged longer. It's as if the brain says, here's the protagonist, this is the center of the scene, and the narrative is constructed based on this reference. Smart communication tools are gradually teaching people to see their own bodies as part of the message. Positioning is no longer just about aesthetics or professional posture. It's the first act of persuasion. When you're at the center, whether of a table, a screen, or an idea, the other person's brain organizes the conversation around you. It puts you in the driver's seat. That's why the power of position goes far beyond appearance. It defines the story the mind creates about you before even hearing your voice. And this story is written in seconds, in the distance from the camera, in the line of light, in the way you inhabit the space. AI is just beginning to decipher these codes, but the human brain has understood them for millennia. Deep down, I've always known that it's not what we say that makes us heard. It's where we speak from. The science of distance is one of the most fascinating areas of modern psychology, and perhaps one of the least understood. It all begins with something seemingly simple: the space between bodies. But what seems like a mere matter of centimeters is actually an invisible language that shapes perceptions, builds trust, and awakens or destroys empathy. The human mind reads space as if deciphering intentions. Every approach, every step back, every inclination of the body carries meaning that the brain interprets in milliseconds, even before a word is spoken. Recent social neuroscience research has shown that physical distance can synchronize brain waves. When two people naturally adjust their movements, pauses, and breathing, their brains enter a kind of neural harmony called intersubjective coupling. It is in this state that genuine rapport is born, the kind of connection in which words seem to flow smoothly, as if both people share the same thought. In leadership, teaching, or negotiation contexts, this synchronization can mean the difference between influence and resistance. Proxemics, the science that studies the use of space in communication, began with anthropological observations by Edward T. Hall, but today extends to the realm of applied neuroscience and artificial intelligence. Major technology companies are testing systems that interpret distance, gaze, and posture patterns in corporate meetings to assess a group's level of engagement. Cameras map how leaders move in space and correlate this with indicators of trust and receptiveness. In recent experiments, when a presenter consciously adjusted their distance, moving closer during emotional moments and stepping back slightly during complex explanations, audience retention increased by up to 23%. The mind reacts to distance with the same neural circuitry it does to threat. One step too far can be read as an invasion, and one too little as indifference. That's why good communicators develop an almost artistic instinct for gauging the right space. They don't just speak, they calibrate presence. In the most advanced neuro-leadership companies, training includes spatial perception modules, in which leaders are filmed and analyzed in slow motion. Small adjustments in position, such as aligning the body at a wide angle or reducing distance when trying to inspire trust, have been shown to have a direct impact on how teams describe their sense of psychological safety. But there's something even more intriguing. Distance isn't just physical, it's also emotional and cognitive. Research from the MIT Media Lab indicates that the brain creates distance maps, even when we interact digitally. Camera framing in a video conference, sound latency, and even speech response time create an illusion of proximity or distance that influences the degree of empathy. Therefore, new generations of AI systems are being trained to understand and simulate human proxemics. Instead of simply processing textual language, these machines learn to interpret pauses, micro-expressions, and variations in tone to reproduce a more organic spatial sensation. In human-machine interaction labs, researchers can already measure users' emotional responses when an AI adjusts its virtual presence by bringing its voice closer or changing the framing of a visual interface. The results are impressive. The more the AI respects the ideal perceptual distance, the greater the sense of empathy reported by participants. This is redefining the concept of digital communication. What was once a cold exchange of data begins to acquire emotional texture. The brain, in its deep desire for connection, tends to humanize anything that mimics human spatial patterns. This breakthrough opens a powerful ethical and scientific frontier. If space is a form of language, those who master this language wield a new form of influence, subtle, almost invisible, but incredibly effective. The good news is that this influence doesn't have to be manipulation. When applied consciously, it becomes a bridge. The right distance preserves the other's autonomy while simultaneously creating a safe space where ideas can be shared without resistance. It's a fine, almost spiritual balance between presence and respect. Meanwhile, in cutting-edge corporate environments, behavioral analytics systems are already operating quietly in the background. At a large consulting firm in the United States, algorithms measure the relational density of a meeting. How often people lean in, lock eyes, or mirror gestures. This metric, once the domain of observational psychology, is now processed in real time by AI. The goal is not to replace human intuition, but to enhance it, to give leaders concrete data on something that has always been considered intangible, the quality of presence. There's an almost poetic force to this kind of discovery. Technology is, ironically, teaching us to be more human. We're rediscovering the power of space, silence, and mindfulness as instruments of real connection. The future of communication won't just be about what we say, but about how we exist in the same perceptual field, even if separated by screens, continents, or binary codes. And it's at this point that anticipation ignites. If AI is already beginning to understand the invisible language of space and emotion, what will happen when it learns to consciously create the feeling of genuine presence? What changes when a machine not only speaks, but also approaches with the exact measure of empathy that the human brain recognizes as real? The answer is now being written in laboratories and startups that combine neuroscience, behavioral design, and social perception algorithms. What we know so far is that we are facing a new form of communication, one that combines biology, psychology, and code. And as the distance between human and machine diminishes, perhaps we are about to discover something more profound. That understanding space is understanding the very essence of human connection. Have you ever noticed how, when you change environments, the way you speak, gesture, and even think also changes? There are places where words flow as if pushed by an invisible energy, and others where everything seems more restrained, introspective, as if the air itself were demanding silence. This is no coincidence. It's the brain responding to space. The human mind is a context-reading machine. It interprets every wall, every sound, every distance as a signal of how it should behave. And the most fascinating thing is that this adaptation happens in milliseconds, automatically without you even realizing it. In open spaces, the body understands it can expand. The visual field widens, muscles relax, and the nervous system releases neurotransmitters linked to curiosity and expression. This is why, in spacious places, people speak louder, gesture more, and venture more ideas. The brain associates physical spaciousness with mental freedom. In contrast, when we enter enclosed spaces, something subtle happens. The limbic system becomes more vigilant, perception turns inward, and the tone of voice naturally lowers. It's as if the body is saying, here, introspection is safer than exposure. This variation isn't emotional weakness. It's an ancestral adaptation, shaped by millennia of survival in environments that demanded different states of presence. The science of spaces, known as psychogeography or neuroarchitecture, has demonstrated the direct impact of the environment on communication. In human behavior laboratories, sensors record how acoustics, lighting, and room size alter voice patterns and body movement. In a recent study, researchers observed that participants placed in rooms with high ceilings and natural light spoke 26% more words per minute and had more creative vocabulary. In spaces with low ceilings and artificial lighting, speech became more measured, detailed, and emotionally introspective. Space shapes the type of thinking that flourishes. The mind also calibrates tone of voice and gestures based on the unconscious perception of authority in the environment. In meeting rooms, for example, the brain reads elements such as chair position, light direction, and distance from the center of the table as indicators of hierarchy. Small spatial shifts can drastically alter the perception of power. Stanford researchers found that when a person stands slightly at the front of the group and maintains an upright posture, others' unconscious assessment of leadership increases by up to 40%. This happens in less than 200 milliseconds, even before a word is spoken. These findings explain why some people appear naturally more convincing, even when saying exactly what others say. The difference lies in how the body occupies space. The human mind assesses authority before listening to the content. It analyzes the direction of gaze, body balance, and the coherence between voice and gesture. When there is spatial congruence, the observer's brain interprets presence as competence. It's as if to say, this person dominates the environment, therefore they dominate the subject. This automatic reading has evolutionary roots. In ancient groups, those who knew how to use space safely had a greater chance of survival. Today, the most innovative companies are already applying this science to communication and leadership training. In some of them, smart cameras capture micro-gestures, distances, and movement patterns during presentations, and algorithms provide immediate feedback. A step forward at this moment would reinforce authority, reduce the distance now to generate connection. What seems like theater is, in fact, applied neurology, and the results are tangible. Teams report greater engagement, leaders feel more confident, and audiences respond with greater attention and empathy. But there's a deeper layer to this story. The brain reacts not only to the physical environment, but also to the sense of emotional space each person creates. a welcoming voice, a steady gaze, and an open posture generate in the other person a perception of closeness, even if they're meters apart. The reverse is also true. When someone closes down physically or projects rigidity, the other person's mind activates defense circuits. Communication then becomes a subtle struggle for psychological territory. Knowing how to manage this distance is mastering a silent form of leadership. We live in a time when science is beginning to translate into numbers what human intuition has always known. Every space has an emotional field. It influences the rhythm of words, the intensity of voice, and the willingness to listen. And, if we observe closely, we'll realize that the environment speaks to us even before anyone opens their mouth. It whispers, shapes, inspires, and the brain obediently responds. What's to come is even more surprising. New artificial intelligence systems can already detect these subtleties and adjust communication according to the perceived space climate. In virtual meeting platforms, algorithms identify whether participants are more withdrawn or expansive and adapt framing, tone of voice, and even screen lighting to restore balance. The goal is not just efficiency, but empathy. We're learning that understanding space, physical, digital, and emotional, is understanding the heart of human communication. And as technology advances, the mind continues to do what it has always done: measure the world around it for signs of safety, connection, and authority. Each environment then becomes an invisible mirror of our own mind, a stage where body, emotion, and presence intertwine to tell stories that words alone could never convey. True mastery of communication lies in the science of the invisible. The analysis of proxemica and the neurocommunication unveils a fundamental principle for professional and leadership success. Being heard is not primarily a matter of volume or content of words, but of conscious mastery of space and angle. In a fraction of a second, your interlocutor's brain, acting on ancestral instinct in limbic system, processes distance to determine whether you pose a threat or a source of safety. Maintaining the ideal professional distance, typically between 1.2 and 1.5 meters, is the switch that deactivates the defense. Instead of withdrawing, the mind allows itself to engage in reasoning and listening through prefrontal cortex, establishing the biological foundation for trust. Besides the distance, the angle positioning is the silent code of your intention. A frontal approach, calibrated at the right moment, can generate genuine rapport through the synchrony of mirror neurons. The strategic use of verticality, whether subtly standing in front of seated people or in the ideal framing of a camera, with visible shoulders and space overhead, projects a frame of authority or equality that the mind deciphers before hearing any sentence. These subtleties are not subjective. They are measurable influence tools. Corporate and academic experiments demonstrate that small changes in spatial layout can result in an increase of up to 30% in the perception of credibility. High-impact professionals don't improvise. They are architects of space and presence. Modern communication has abandoned the field of intuition to consolidate itself as a science applied to the mind. The power to influence, lead, and convert resides in the invisible space between bodies, where respect, safety, and engagement are built. Mastering this dynamic is not just a soft skill, it is the definitive competitive advantage that transforms the way your audience, customers, employees, or investors, subconsciously decides whether to open their minds and trust your message. Gratitude.